Work hard, save diligently, wait until the right age, then retire and enjoy life. But real life rarely follows such a neat timeline. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make when thinking about retirement is assuming that there is a perfect age to retire, an age that somehow works for everyone, an age where all the numbers magically line up and every decision becomes obvious. The truth is, retirement doesn't work that way. For some people, retiring at 62 is the best financial and personal decision they'll ever make. For others, waiting until 67 or even 70 can provide tremendous benefits and peace of mind. The challenge is figuring out which path makes sense for you, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Because if you retire at 62 instead of waiting until 67, you could give up hundreds of dollars every month in Social Security benefits for the rest of your life. At first glance, that sounds like an easy decision. Why would anyone willingly accept less money? But here's where things get interesting. If you wait until age 67, you don't immediately come out ahead. In many cases, it can take until around age 79 before the larger checks make up for all the payments you missed while waiting. That's a long time. And suddenly the decision becomes much more complicated. Now you're not just asking, how much will I receive each month? You're asking, how long am I likely to live? You're asking, what if I need the money sooner? You're asking, how much of my retirement savings will I have to spend while I'm waiting? These are real questions, and they're questions that deserve real answers. Recently, a survey asked thousands of Americans what they considered the ideal retirement age. The average answer was age 63. Honestly, that answer didn't surprise me. For decades, people have imagined retirement happening somewhere in their early to mid-60s. It's old enough to have built a career and accumulated savings, but young enough to still enjoy good health, energy, and freedom. What's even more interesting is what happened after people retired. A large majority of retirees reported being happier than they were during their working years. Think about that for a moment. After all the fears, after all the uncertainty, after all the sleepless nights wondering whether they had enough money, most retirees ended up saying they were happier. That's encouraging because retirement isn't just a financial event, it's a life event. It's the opportunity to wake up without an alarm clock. It's having breakfast without watching the clock. It's spending more time with grandchildren. It's taking that road trip you've postponed for 20 years. It's finally having ownership over your time. And for many people, that freedom turns out to be even more valuable than they expected. But there's another side of the story that doesn't get discussed nearly enough. A lot of people don't retire when they plan to retire. Life makes the decision for them. Sometimes it's a company downsizing. Sometimes it's a health issue. Sometimes it's taking care of a spouse or aging parent. Sometimes the workplace simply changes. And suddenly, a person who's worked faithfully for decades finds themselves unexpectedly pushed toward retirement. That's why the average retirement age in America is often lower than the age people originally planned for. Many individuals who intended to work until 65 or 67 ended up leaving the workforce years earlier, not because they wanted to, because circumstances changed. And that's one of the most important lessons anyone approaching retirement can learn. Don't just prepare for your ideal retirement date. Prepare for the possibility that retirement arrives earlier than expected. Because if retirement shows up 5 years sooner than planned, you don't want to be scrambling to figure out healthcare, Social Security, income sources, and withdrawal strategies all at once. You want a roadmap. The good news is that retirement planning becomes much easier when you understand a handful of key milestones. There are certain birthdays that completely change the rules. They affect your retirement accounts. They affect your taxes. They affect your health care. And they affect your Social Security decisions. Miss one of these milestones, and the mistake can cost thousands of dollars. Understand them, and you'll be in a much stronger position to make smart decisions. Let's start with age 55. Most people have never heard of this rule until they need it, yet it can be incredibly valuable. It's commonly called the Rule of 55. Here's what it means. If you leave your employer during or after the year you turn 55, you may be able to withdraw money from that employer's 401k without paying the usual 10% early withdrawal penalty. That can be a huge advantage for someone retiring before age 59 and a half. But there's a catch, and it's an important one. The rule only applies to the retirement plan connected to the employer you're leaving. If you immediately roll that money into an IRA, you generally lose access to this exception. That's why planning matters. Far too many people automatically roll everything into an IRA because that's what they think they're supposed to do. Then later, they discover they need access to some of that money. By then, the opportunity may be gone. This doesn't mean you should never roll over your 401k. It simply means you should understand your options before making a move. The order of your decisions matters. And in retirement planning, small decisions often create very large consequences. Next comes one of the most important birthdays in retirement planning, age 59 and a half. For many people, this is the first major feeling of financial freedom. Why? Because this is generally when the early withdrawal penalty disappears on qualified retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, traditional retirement plans. Once you reach age 59 and a half, accessing your retirement savings becomes significantly easier. There are fewer restrictions, fewer exceptions, fewer hoops to jump through. For many future retirees, this age represents flexibility. It means your retirement savings become a resource that is fully available if needed, and flexibility is valuable, especially when you're navigating one of the biggest transitions of your life. But while age 59 and a half is important, the age that gets most of the attention is age 62. That's when Social Security enters the picture. And this is where retirement planning becomes deeply personal, because there is no universal right answer, only trade-offs. Let's imagine your full retirement age benefit would be $1,800 per month. If you claim at age 62, that benefit might drop to around $1,260. That's a significant difference, month after month, year after year, for the rest of your life. At first glance, waiting seems obvious, but retirement decisions are rarely that simple, because someone who claims at 62 starts collecting checks immediately. Someone who waits until 67 receives nothing during those 5 years. And that's where the math starts getting interesting. The person claiming early receives 60 months of payments before the person waiting receives a single dollar. Those payments add up. In many cases, it takes until approximately age 79 before the larger benefit finally catches up. That's called the break-even point, and understanding it changes the conversation entirely. Suddenly, retirement planning isn't just about maximizing a monthly benefit. It's about balancing certainty and uncertainty. It's about weighing today's needs against tomorrow's possibilities. And perhaps most importantly, it's about recognizing that none of us knows exactly how long we'll live. That uncertainty makes Social Security one of the most debated topics in retirement planning. Some people look at their family history and see relatives living well into their 90s. For them, delaying benefits may make perfect sense. Others have experienced health challenges or have a family history that suggests a shorter lifespan. In that case, claiming earlier may be the better choice. Neither decision is automatically right or wrong. The mistake is assuming there's a one-size-fits-all answer. There's another factor that often gets overlooked when discussing Social Security timing. Most break-even calculations focus only on the benefit amount. But what about the money you're spending while you wait? Let's say you decide to delay claiming Social Security until age 67. Those 5 years of living expenses still need to come from somewhere. Maybe you're withdrawing money from a retirement account. Maybe you're selling investments. Maybe you're drawing down cash reserves. Whatever the source, that money is no longer invested and compounding for your future. And compounding is one of the most powerful forces in personal finance. A dollar invested today has the potential to become much more valuable years from now. When you withdraw funds earlier than planned, you aren't just spending the money itself, you're also giving up the future growth that money might have generated. That's why Social Security decisions should never be made in isolation. They need to be viewed within the context of your entire financial picture: your savings, your investments, your spending habits, your health, your family history, and your retirement goals. Now let's move to age 65. If there's one milestone that catches people off guard more than any other, this is probably it. Because age 65 is when Medicare eligibility begins. And for many Americans, this birthday changes everything. Here's why. Healthcare is one of the largest expenses retirees face. When you're employed, it's easy to underestimate the true cost because an employer often pays a significant portion of the premium. Once that employer coverage disappears, the numbers can become shocking. A person retiring at age 62 may need to bridge 3 full years before Medicare begins. That's not a small gap. That's 36 months of healthcare costs, 36 months of premiums, 36 months of potential deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses. Many retirement plans that look solid on paper suddenly become much less comfortable once healthcare costs are added. This is one of the reasons some people continue working longer than they originally intended. It's not because they need more retirement savings, it's because they need health insurance. And honestly, that's a very practical consideration. Retirement isn't just about having enough money to stop working. It's about having enough resources to maintain your quality of life. That includes healthcare, that includes prescriptions, that includes access to doctors and specialists. Before retiring early, it's important to estimate these costs realistically, not hopefully, not optimistically, realistically. Too many retirement plans rely on best-case scenarios. Successful retirement planning usually comes from preparing for average and even worst-case scenarios, because life rarely follows our most optimistic assumptions. Now let's talk about age 67. For people born in 1960 or later, this is generally considered full retirement age for Social Security. Think of this as the benchmark, the reference point, the number from which all other Social Security calculations are made. Claim before this age and benefits are reduced. Claim after this age and benefits increase. Many retirees find comfort in waiting until full retirement age because it avoids the permanent reduction associated with claiming early. There's a psychological benefit too. People often feel they're receiving the benefit they've fully earned, not reduced, not delayed, just exactly what was promised based on their work history. But even here, context matters. Some people continue working beyond age 67 because they enjoy their careers. Others work because they want additional savings. And some simply aren't ready for retirement emotionally. That's another topic we don't discuss enough. Retirement isn't just a financial transition, it's an emotional one. For decades, work provides structure, purpose, identity, relationships, a routine. Then suddenly, all of that changes. Some retirees adapt immediately. Others struggle. That's why the most successful retirements often include more than financial planning. They include lifestyle planning. What will your days look like? Who will you spend time with? What will give you purpose? How will you stay physically active? How will you stay mentally engaged? Money matters enormously, but purpose matters too. A retirement filled with financial security and personal fulfillment is far more rewarding than one that focuses on numbers alone. Finally, we arrive at age 70. This is the final major Social Security milestone. After age 67, benefits continue growing through delayed retirement credits. Each year you wait increases your benefit. By age 70, those increases stop. There's no additional reward for delaying beyond that point. You've reached the maximum benefit available. For many retirees, seeing the difference can be eye-opening. An individual entitled to $1,800 per month at full retirement age might receive over $2,200 per month by waiting until age 70. That's hundreds of additional dollars every month, thousands every year, potentially tens of thousands over a retirement that lasts decades. Of course, those larger checks come with a cost. You had to wait. You had to fund your lifestyle through those additional years. You had to delay gratification. And once again, the break-even analysis enters the picture. For many individuals, it takes until their early 80s before the larger benefit fully offsets the payments they gave up by waiting. For some people, that's a worthwhile trade. For others, it isn't. But there's one argument for delaying that deserves special attention. It's called longevity protection. Many retirees aren't worried about dying too soon. They're worried about living too long. Imagine reaching age 92. Imagine your investment portfolio has experienced years of withdrawals. Imagine market volatility has reduced account balances. At that point, a larger guaranteed Social Security check can provide enormous peace of mind. It's one of the few income sources that continues for life, no matter how long that life turns out to be. That's why Social Security isn't simply an investment decision. It's also an insurance decision. You're protecting yourself against the possibility of a very long retirement, and that's a perspective many people overlook. So when you step back and look at these milestone ages, 55, 59 and a half, 62, 65, 67, and 70, you begin to see a pattern. Retirement isn't defined by one magical birthday. It's shaped by a series of financial transitions. Each milestone opens a door. Each milestone creates opportunities. Each milestone introduces decisions that can affect the rest of your retirement journey. Which brings us back to the original question, what is the perfect age to retire? The more I've studied retirement, the more convinced I've become that this is actually the wrong question, because age alone doesn't determine retirement success. Conditions do. The better question is this: what needs to be true before I retire? When you ask that question, your focus shifts away from arbitrary ages and toward financial readiness. And that's where real retirement planning begins. So instead of circling a birthday on a calendar and hoping everything works out, I encourage people to walk through 4 very specific questions. These questions are far more important than whether you're 62, 65, or 67. The first question is simple. Can your income support your lifestyle without a paycheck? Notice I didn't ask whether you have a certain amount saved. I asked whether your income can support your lifestyle. Those are 2 very different things. Many people become obsessed with reaching a specific retirement account balance, $1 million, $2 million, whatever number they've seen in an article or heard from a friend. But retirement isn't really about account balances. It's about cash flow. Every month, money comes in and money goes out. The goal is making sure enough money comes in to comfortably cover what goes out. That income could come from several sources: Social Security, a pension, dividend-paying investments, rental income, part-time work, interest payments, retirement account withdrawals. The source matters less than the reliability. When you add everything together, does it comfortably cover your monthly expenses? Not barely, not exactly, comfortably. Because life has a way of introducing surprises. A roof leaks, a vehicle needs repairs, a family member needs help. Medical expenses appear unexpectedly. Retirement plans that operate with zero margin often become stressful retirement experiences. The happiest retirees tend to have breathing room. They aren't constantly worrying about every dollar. They know an unexpected expense won't derail their entire financial picture. That's the kind of confidence you're aiming for. The second question is one that too many people postpone. What is your healthcare strategy before Medicare? Notice I didn't say healthcare hope. I said healthcare strategy. Hope is not a retirement plan. A strategy is. If you're retiring before age 65, you need to know exactly how you'll obtain health insurance. You need estimates. You need quotes. You need numbers. Because healthcare is one of the largest variables in early retirement. I've seen people carefully calculate investment returns, withdrawal rates, and Social Security benefits down to the penny, yet completely overlook healthcare costs. Then reality arrives, and suddenly their retirement budget is under pressure. Don't make that mistake. Know the numbers before you retire, not after. The third question may be the most important of all. How long does your money need to last? At first, this sounds impossible to answer. After all, nobody knows exactly how long they'll live, but you can still make reasonable assumptions. A healthy person retiring at age 62 could easily spend 25 to 35 years in retirement. Think about that. 30 years. That's almost an entire second career. It's a long time for a portfolio to provide income. It's a long time for inflation to work against you. It's a long time for unexpected expenses to emerge. And it's a long time to remain disciplined as an investor. Retirement planning isn't just about getting to retirement, it's about staying retired. That's an entirely different challenge. Many people focus intensely on accumulation, saving, investing, growing wealth. Then retirement arrives and suddenly the focus shifts. Now the challenge is preservation and distribution. How much can you withdraw? How much should remain invested? How do you manage market downturns? How do you protect against inflation? How do you ensure the money lasts? These questions become increasingly important the earlier you retire. Someone retiring at age 55 faces a very different planning challenge than someone retiring at age 70. The longer the retirement horizon, the more carefully withdrawals must be managed. The fourth question is one that often gets overlooked because it isn't exciting. Is your debt under control? Debt has a way of quietly stealing retirement freedom. A mortgage payment, a car loan, credit card balances, personal loans. Individually, they may not seem overwhelming. Together, they can dramatically increase the amount of income required each month. Imagine two retirees. Both receive exactly the same monthly income. The first retiree owns their home outright, drives a paid-off vehicle, and carries no consumer debt. The second retiree has a mortgage, a car payment, and lingering credit card balances. Which one feels more financially secure? The answer is obvious. Answer: the retiree with fewer obligations needs less income to maintain the same lifestyle. That's why reducing debt before retirement can have such a powerful impact. Every debt payment eliminated lowers the amount of monthly income you need. It creates flexibility. And flexibility is one of the greatest assets a retiree can have. Now, if all four of these questions have strong answers when you're 60 years old, then perhaps retirement at 60 makes perfect sense. If those answers aren't there yet at 65, then additional preparation may be necessary. Notice how age isn't driving the decision, readiness is. And that's exactly how retirement should be approached. But before we finish, there's one final reality that deserves attention. It's a reality that catches millions of people by surprise every year. Retirement often arrives earlier than expected. Research consistently shows that a large percentage of retirees leave the workforce sooner than planned, not because they wanted to, because circumstances changed: a layoff, a company restructuring, an illness, a spouse needing care, an aging parent requiring support. Suddenly, a carefully planned retirement timeline disappears, and a decision that was supposed to happen 5 years from now becomes a decision that needs to happen next month. This is why flexibility matters. This is why preparation matters. And this is why waiting until the last minute can be dangerous. Far too many people assume they have more time than they actually do. They assume they'll start planning later, saving later, learning later, adjusting later. Then later arrives unexpectedly. The reality is that many households enter retirement with far less savings than financial headlines would have you believe. You'll often hear large average account balances discussed in the media, but averages can be misleading. A small number of very large accounts can pull the average higher. The median, the true middle, often tells a very different story. And for many Americans, retirement resources are much more limited than they expected. That's why building multiple sources of income can be so valuable. Not because it's trendy, not because it's exciting, because it's practical. Income diversification reduces dependence on any single source. Some retirees rely heavily on Social Security, others supplement it with investment income. Some own rental properties, others generate cash flow through dividend paying stocks. Some continue consulting or working part time. The specific strategy matters less than the principle behind it. The principle is resilience. If one source of income struggles, another source helps carry the load. That creates stability, and stability creates confidence. Think about it this way. If all of your retirement security depends on one account balance, one market outcome, or one source of income, you're carrying a significant amount of risk. But when retirement income comes from multiple sources, the entire plan becomes stronger, more flexible, more adaptable, and ultimately more durable. So after everything we've discussed today, here's what I hope you remember. There is no universally perfect age to retire. Not 62, not 65, not 67, not 70. The perfect retirement age is the age at which your financial foundation, healthcare plan, income strategy, and personal goals align. For some people, that happens earlier than expected. For others, it happens later, and that's perfectly okay. Retirement isn't a race, it's not a competition. Nobody hands out trophies for retiring first. The goal isn't to retire as early as possible. The goal is to retire with confidence, to wake up in the morning knowing your bills are covered, knowing your healthcare needs are addressed, knowing your income can support your lifestyle, knowing you've built enough flexibility to handle life's inevitable surprises. Most importantly, knowing that your time finally belongs to you. Because at the end of the day, retirement isn't really about money. Money is simply the tool. Retirement is about freedom, freedom to spend more time with family, freedom to pursue interests you've postponed for decades, freedom to travel, freedom to volunteer, freedom to rest, freedom to choose how your days are spent. And that freedom becomes much more meaningful when it's supported by a thoughtful financial plan. So learn the key milestones. Understand what changes at ages 55, 59 and a half, 62, 65, 67, and 70. Run the healthcare numbers carefully. Evaluate your Social Security options thoughtfully. Reduce debt whenever possible. Build reliable income streams. And perhaps most importantly, prepare for the possibility that retirement arrives sooner than expected. If you do those things, you'll put yourself in a position that many people never reach. A position where retirement becomes a choice instead of a crisis. And that's ultimately what we're all working toward. Not finding the perfect age, finding the perfect level of preparedness. Because when preparedness meets opportunity, retirement stops being something you fear and starts becoming something you can genuinely look forward to.